Hey guys, it's Toby Morrison here, and welcome to today's video on how to understand chronic fatigue syndrome, especially for those who actually aren't experiencing it firsthand but are supporting someone with it, or know someone who's going through it but just wants to understand a little bit about what they're going through and what it's like. This video will be really beneficial for any of you who are actually in the suffering period right now, who is actually going through this illness, but also for anyone outside of the illness who is supporting someone through this journey, whether it's a spouse, family member, friend, lover, partner. You'll find this video really helpful to understand kind of what they're experiencing and what they're going through, because chronic fatigue syndrome in essence is an invisible illness. It's not like a broken arm where you can see that there's something physical going on. Okay, you've got a broken arm. Like, I understand, I have empathy for you. With chronic fatigue syndrome, you might see the person sleeping a lot, in a lot of pain. On the outside, they might look totally fine, but on the inside, they feel like they're dying. And so I want to really do this video. For me, this is a really important video to do, because without understanding, there's no compassion. Without understanding, there's no knowledge on how to best help someone go through this, and also for yourself. Like, when I was going through chronic fatigue syndrome all those years ago, if I found this video and was able to see that what I was going through was actually so real and so hard, but also there's some things that I can do to help myself, I would have just felt a lot better. Because there's a lot of crap and negative stuff online that isn't helpful, and can just throw in more fear and more negative stuff on top of what you're already going through, which is hard enough as it is. Okay, so I've done a little fun diagram for you, and it looks a little bit messy right now, but I'm going to go through it one by one. I'm going to share with you kind of the experience of what people go through when it comes to chronic fatigue syndrome, and also the other side of that, what it looks like to start getting better and improving your health and start to feel better. Okay, so we're going to dial in first on what happens and really the essence of what someone who's got chronic fatigue syndrome is going through on an emotional level when they're at the initial stage of finding a diagnosis, finding out what's wrong with them. Because the biggest problem with chronic fatigue syndrome, as some of you may know, it's an ongoing period of excluding other illnesses, plus adding up the symptoms that you're experiencing for a long enough time, usually in the essence of 6 months, to be diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. Not only that, but there are a lot of people in the medical field who do not believe in chronic fatigue syndrome, and they call it the yuppie flu, or it's depression on its own, or you're just making it up. You're being lazy. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Most of the people that I know, in fact, all of the people that I've ever worked with in our online recovery program, and we're talking literally almost over 2,000 people, not one of these people were lazy. Not one of these people were sitting on the couch doing nothing with their life. These people are overachievers. They're gifted in some way, whether it's academic, whether it's creative, whether it's sport, whether it's business or career, and there's something inside of them that actually doesn't want to sit still. They're usually type A personalities more so than someone who is being lazy. So that's the first thing to recognize, is that what you're going through is 100% real. You're not making it up, and in fact, it's such an insult. I think that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this, because the type of person you are is someone that you wouldn't, you wouldn't wish this upon your worst enemy. Okay, and so we're going to go through quickly the physical stuff first, and I want to go through the emotional, because the physical stuff's really important to point out. How I explain chronic fatigue syndrome to most people who don't have it, I say, imagine going on a really long flight, and if you're over the age of 18, imagine drinking lots of alcohol, add in a cold and a flu on top of that, and then you wake up with jet lag, a hangover, and the flu. Times that by 20 and have that for a long period of time. And that's kind of how I explain it. And it just saying that's kind of what it's like. I'm sure if you've got chronic fatigue, you're nodding your head going, that's exactly what I feel like. And people go, wow, like that must be exhausting and tough. And it's like, yeah, the problem is it's not just tiredness. Chronic fatigue syndrome is not just fatigue. And that's why the name itself doesn't really do it justice. There's obviously ME, they call it ME, CFS, but let's just call it chronic fatigue syndrome for now. But I'm going to go through the list right here. So as you can see here, we've got exhaustion, we've got pain. And exhaustion, it's not like tired for 2 days and that's it. It's that ongoing exhaustion that just doesn't leave. Pain, brain fog, where you just can't think straight. You can't string a sentence together without sluttering and stirring your words. Fatigue. And again, there's different types of fatigue. There's emotional fatigue, there's mental fatigue, there's body fatigue. It's all different and it's all encompassing as well. It's very overwhelming. Muscle aches and pains, sore legs, arms shaking. Like there's so many different symptoms that people experience. These are just some of them. This is not even all of them. These are some of the most common ones. Flu-like symptoms, swollen glands, sore throat, things like that, gut issues. So, most people have irritable stomachs. So it's very hard to have a consistent nutrition plan when their gut's all over the place, diarrhea, constipation, or both. Decondition, because they can't do what they normally do, their body starts to decondition, they lose muscle mass, they lose tone, and they lose strength and stamina. PEM, which is post-exertional malaise. So basically, if you push yourself too hard, you get a post-exertional fatigue that comes with that. And that can last for a day, can last for half a day, it can last for a couple of weeks. It just depends on where the person's at. Don't worry, I'm going to share with you the hopeful, more tangible stuff that you can do to control that, and obviously not for that to be a problem for you. But it's important to note where people start with when they do have chronic fatigue syndrome. Low immune system, so very susceptible to colds or flus and things like that. Dizziness, poor sleep. There's a big myth that most people think that having chronic fatigue syndrome, you just sleep all the time. In fact, it can be the opposite. People with chronic fatigue syndrome can get so out of whack with their circadian rhythm and their sleep patterns that they find it very hard to have deep, restful sleep. And that's why this cycle continues for so long. Poor sleep is a big one that most people think, oh yeah, geez, I'd love to have chronic fatigue. You just sleep all day. No, stop saying that. Like, that's not okay. Like, that statement itself is really degrading and insulting to someone who wishes they could actually just get out and run and play. Swollen glands, sensitivities to food, light, smell, all kinds of things there. Irritability, cognition problems, memory loss, and then neurological symptoms here as well, as you can see. And so they're just some of the main symptoms that people experience when they're going through chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, imagine experiencing all of these things but not knowing what's wrong with you. It could be quite scary, okay? And this is the cycle that most people go through on the emotional aspect of being, feeling this way, is the emotional struggle that comes with suffering and not being able to live the life that you want to live. Like I said before, most of the people that we work with are people who want the most out of life. They're trying to, they're pushing themselves. They want to be the best they can be. And so it's basically like the carpet has been pulled from underneath their feet and their life's been flipped upside down. So of course there is going to be some emotional suffering that comes with that. Most people get this wrong. They think that chronic fatigue syndrome is a mental thing. It's like, it's just in your mind. It's like, no, it's a physical, neurological illness that affects me emotionally and physically. Yeah, definitely the physical part, but it also affects you emotionally on a secondary level because you can't do what you once were able to do, okay? And this is where that anger and frustration comes in. Someone who's going through chronic fatigue syndrome, it's very normal and appropriate to feel anger and frustration. It's normal to be scared and reactive. especially when you don't know what's wrong with you. You're going to see so many different people, you're getting so many different advice, hopefully getting some good advice, but more often than not, because it's so misunderstood, you're usually getting, you're usually getting told the wrong things, or you're feeling like it's your fault, okay? And there's no real solution. The problem is, there's no pill that fixes chronic fatigue syndrome. It's not just like you go to the doctor and you get a script of antibiotics and you take them and then you feel fine. And I think that's the problem when it comes to chronic illness and chronic disease. It's not just a quick fix solution. There needs to be a long-term plan and strategy, one for where you're at and two for where you're going, and it needs to be methodical, safe, and effective. Worry, huge one. Like worrying, whether or not you're going to be able to get your life back, worrying or not what your friends think, worrying that you have to make excuses all the time. There's so much worry, which then goes into shame and guilt. If you're constantly worrying about what people think, you start to feel shameful, you start to feel guilty about your situation. Guilt is a huge one that we help our clients with. We have a resident mindset coach in our online recovery program, and we cover guilt just alone in its own workshop, because it's so normal to feel guilty for your family and friends who so badly want you to get better, but you feel this pressure for not being able to click your fingers and feel better overnight. And, guilt is such a heavy emotion and can really hold you back, and it's tough. Secondary anxiety and depression is so normal and natural. Like, people think, I'm not depressed. It's like, well, yeah, but you're not living the life that you want to live. Of course, you're going to eventually feel upset about that. It's only normal and appropriate. And I think anyone who doesn't have chronic fatigue syndrome, who is listening and watching this, would nod their head and go, yeah, if I was in that, I'd be absolutely depressed and a wreck and stuck too, okay? So it's important to acknowledge these things. Stuck and, as I said before, reactive. So these are just some of the emotions that a lot of these, anyone basically who's going through chronic fatigue syndrome is going through. It's only normal and appropriate to go through these emotions when you're experiencing all of this, okay? And so this is I guess the hard part, or the not so good part. There is hope, obviously, because there are things that you can do that are within your control, that you can change in and participate in to help you improve and maintain, level out and stop the pushing and crashing, and start to focus on rebuilding your health and reconditioning your body and your mind and your brain to feel better, okay? And so I just wanted to share with you first, and imagine just being a person, this happy person. I did a girl here because typically, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a higher percentage of females that get chronic fatigue syndrome than males. But there are still a lot of males who do get it and go through it. And, one of the things is, imagine just being, your happy self, and then all of a sudden, whether it's over a period of 6 months or it's an overnight thing, or, it's a build-up of things, it's a combination of things that led you to this place. All of a sudden, you can't do what you want to do, and this happy person goes into, this feeling of anger, frustration, scared, worry, shame, guilt, depressed, anxious, and obviously not feeling good. Physically exhausted, pain, brain fog, fatigue, muscle aches, pains, flu-like symptoms, gut issues, PEM, dizziness, poor sleep. It's exhausting even just talking about it, right? You're just thinking, holy shit. And for some of you, this will be really good because you've never been acknowledged for this, okay? So I just want to acknowledge you now. What you're going through is 100% real. On the flip side of things, this is where things change. And you'll see a shift in this, and if you're going through chronic fatigue syndrome, hopefully you're finding the right help for you, and you're getting good, solid, sound information that can help you move forwards. But what happens is, as you start to improve and get better, things start to change. You go from anger and frustrated to aware and hopeful. So we're going to switch over to here right now. Yeah, so aware and hopeful. Knowing and understanding. So at the start, when you go through this, there's no understanding, there's no knowledge of what's going on, and you're going on a merry-go-round of ups and downs. Whereas now, hopefully, you start to go, you know what? There's other people out there who are improving their health and their life. They're actually starting to make progress. There's a lot of recovery stories out there people have gone from severe chronic fatigue syndrome to fully living again. I'm one of them. I've met so many people along my journey who are doing and have done the same thing. Okay. And the crazy part is it was nothing magical. There was no overnight cure. There was no quick fix. It was methodical, a holistic, methodical plan and changes over a period of time that equated to a result. And this is what happens. Like when I look at all our members who are improving and progressing, and this is on a weekly basis, we do a check-in, and people post where they're at, what they're doing, sharing their wins and insights. And it's not a mistake that they are making the improvements that they've made, because they're doing things differently. Whether that means doing less to start with, building a healthy foundation, having a solid baseline, stopping the pushing and crashing. We have lots of training on this kind of stuff to calm the nervous system down, make sure we're refueling our system to make sure that we've got the energy to keep up with the supply, to keep up with the demand. Same thing with mindset, going from this, worry, shame and guilt, these heavy, hard, exhausting emotions, to feeling more free, okay? And that's where we come here, where we start to believe that we can do something about it. But if we believe that there's nothing we can do about it, then we're not going to actually change any behaviors or things in our control that would actually be useful for our well-being and health. You start to feel calmer. You start to forward think. And this is what happens when people come to us. They start to think in a forwards motion, not what is this going to do, or how's that going to help me, or this isn't going to work, to what can I do for myself that's going to be useful right now? What's not working for me that I can do to change and improve that? You start to feel proactive. You start to be proactive. You start to get back in the driver's seat of your life and recovery. That builds confidence, because you start to actually make progress. You have a plan and you are on a forwards path with the right support and the right help. And hopefully, so I know some people out there, and you're listening to this, you might not be fortunate enough to have much support or help. And it's important to try and surround yourself with people who support you and bring you up versus people who bring you down. And I know it's really hard. We have a whole section on boundaries inside our program. Like, it's not just the physical stuff that we help people with. It's learning how to set boundaries. It's learning how to, not avoid, but just not put up with any standard that actually isn't healthy and good for you. And also, reaching and aspiring to the opposite of that, which is what you want, okay? But as you can see, when we go from worry to calm, when we go from shame to forward thinking, when we go from guilt to confident, when we go from depressed, anxious, stuck to having a plan and moving forwards, you're naturally only inclined to move forwards with that. Now, I know it can be really hard to hear that when you might be going through chronic fatigue syndrome right now. You might not be making much progress. And that might be due to a number of reasons, and those reasons need to be looked at and actually methodically looked at and go, okay, well, how can I change this? What is it that needs moving or changing? Am I trying too hard? Am I not trying hard enough? Am I doing too much? Am I maybe getting the wrong help? Is constantly seeking and looking for more problems, is that helping me, or is that making me feel worse? We've seen so many times people go down the rabbit hole of trying so many different things outside of themselves that they become more exhausted, more depressed, more sick, because they're trying things that actually aren't what they need. And if we took stock and actually did things that we needed, then we would actually start to see small, steady progress, which is what we want to aim for. The opposite of that, of the struggle with the symptoms and the pain and the exhaustion, is you begin to have a calmer nervous system, as you can see here. Calmer nervous system, a more functional brain, so the brain fog isn't there. You have cognition. You can start to think for yourself. You can start to speak for yourself. You can start to do and act for yourself. Strength and stamina. We see that once people transfer over and start to build and focus on the things that do work, strength and stamina starts to come back. Okay, and this isn't a race. It's not about, all right, I'm going to do this overnight. It's not about this person did it in that time. It's just about little bits of progress rather than focusing on the end result. More energy is literally a result of having more strength and stamina inside your body. Better balance. So this is the other thing, like as people start to improve and get better, you have a more balanced lifestyle. Okay? Finer motor skills. One thing that comes back over time is your motor skills come back, because it's really like retraining your brain as well as your body. You're starting to do things differently. Same thing with brain fog. As you start to build into it more, you can do more without feeling any worse than you currently do. Okay? Same thing here. Better gut function, improved sleep, and physically more conditioned, more functional, doing without feeling any worse. And as you can see, all these little things here, they all kind of intertwine with each other. And that's why it's so important to have a holistic approach. So, yes, it's important to really be aware and have some empathy and understanding and compassion for yourself and for the person that is going through this. If you're someone on the outside watching this, have some compassion and care for this person. And it's important that you don't put your own stuff onto them. It's important that you just focus on supporting and helping them, and maybe asking the question, is there anything I can do to support you better? And is there anything that you would like me to stop doing? I know one thing for sure is that constantly asking someone how they are every 10 minutes is exhausting, and it's also restating that something's not right. We don't want to do that all the time. We don't want to mentally rehearse that things aren't good. Yes, ask for help. Yes, say, do you need help? But why don't you say, well, if you're struggling, you can come to me and say, hey, I need help. So then it's on the person who is in charge to go, all right, I need help. Okay. These are just some helpful tips that can be really useful for a relationship to not amplify the situation, but support the situation for what it is. Okay. And I just want to give you some hope. If you go through this YouTube channel, or if you go on our website, cfshealth.com, you will see so many great stories of people from all ages, from the age, literally in their teens, all the way up to their 60s and 70s, who have improved their health and got the quality of life back. And it is just really important to see. It's nothing magical. It's just doing the right work and having a holistic focus. It was never just one thing for anyone, in my opinion, that I've ever seen that got them there. It was a holistic approach that got them there in the end. And so, like I said before, I just want you to have a look at this sheet that I've written out for you guys. The transfer is here from the emotional of the negative, the not so good stuff, and then as you start to improve and get better, because these symptoms start to decrease as you start to get better, this is what starts to happen. Okay, from exhaustion, calmer nervous system, pain, calmer nervous system, functional brain, less brain fog, more stamina, less fatigue. And it kind of goes hand in hand, okay? So I just want to say there is no perfect, okay? It's not about getting it perfect, but it is really important to just take stock of where you're at. Acceptance is a big part of this. And the biggest problem with all this, I think, is that, yes, what you're going through is physical. It is a neurological illness. However, your mindset as part of this is important, but to say to someone, think more positively, again, is an insult. So if you're on the outside and you're saying you need to think more positively, it's like, no, that's not going to help anyway. Yeah, yes, maybe being a bit more positive would be useful, but pretending to be fine when you're not fine is also not useful. You're just adding on more fire or more fuel to the fire. Instead, take stock of where you're at. Have a realistic view of what you need help with, and then go, if you have the resources to, go and find that help. There's a lot of free help out there too. There's literally, I've shot like 400 free videos here on this channel for you guys too. So find the help you need, get the support if you can, and if you can't, do the best that you can do to support yourself. Please feel free to share this with anyone who you want to understand you better. I know it can be really exhausting when you're going through chronic fatigue syndrome and feel like you have to explain yourself all the time. That's a part of letting go of that too, and just focusing on your recovery so you can focus on yourself and just do what works for you and stay in your own lane. But I do know that's a double-edged sword. It's really hard because you feel like you have to kind of always explain yourself. And again, we teach that inside our program too, but trying to put too much pressure on yourself. I hope this video helps. Feel free to watch it as many times over as you like. Feel free to send it to any family and friends who would be beneficial to watch this. And know that it's just not such a linear, straight approach. I think that's really important to know. A lot of people on the outside think that it's this straight one line, do this and you're going to get better. And that train of thought is nice, but it's not always, it doesn't look like that, especially when you're going through all these physical symptoms that can be really debilitating at times. So be gentle with yourself, do what you can with what you've got, learn and get the right sound, solid information, and then apply what resonates for you at the moment, and then leave the rest and build from there. Wishing you all the best on your recovery journey with you and your family, and we'll speak to you soon in another video. All the best for now. Bye.